3 minutes. That's all it took for them to wipe my name off the executive board, after 8 years and $1.5 billion in revenue. I walked into the boardroom on Monday morning, dressed like I always was, gray blazer, plain shirt, no tie. I didn't bring a laptop. Julian Roth was already seated, legs crossed, iPad resting on his knee. No handshake, no greeting, just a cold nod. Behind him, the city glared through the glass walls like a silent witness. If you think revenge stories are satisfying, wait till you see this one. Tanner Lee sat to the right, scrolling his phone. He didn't meet my eyes. He always looked up, always smirked. This time, he acted like I was a ghost. Julian tapped the screen, and a document projected onto the wall. Termination notice, already signed by the board. No discussion. No explanation beyond a single bullet point. Violation of hierarchical access protocols to classified modules. I scanned the room. 2 HR reps, both expressionless. No legal counsel, no formal hearing. This was theater. A clean removal staged in under 3 minutes. 8 years. I wrote the predictive engine that saved them from the Series B disaster. I built the neural sequencing logic that turned stratagem tech into the Department of Defense's favorite toy. Now they were discarding me like a stale memo. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I reached into my pocket and laid a USB drive on the table. Julian didn't look at it. That drive saved your ass when the Neurogrid prototype failed integration last June, I said, voice steady. Might want to keep it handy. He blinked once. No reaction. I stood up, turned, and walked out. Tanner still wouldn't look up. The elevator doors closed. For the first time in years, I had no badge, no passcode, no clearance. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. Unknown number. No message, just a single line of text. Neurogrid, file 47. Don't let them erase you. The sender ID was a burn line, auto-wiped in 5 seconds. But I didn't need to trace it. Only one person knew where that file was buried, and he'd been missing for 6 months. Alex Moreno. If Alex was reaching out now, after vanishing from Stratagem without warning, it meant one thing. The system wasn't as clean as Julian thought it was. And maybe, just maybe, they hadn't deleted everything. I walked 3 blocks through the frozen air, past the glass monoliths of downtown Chicago. I didn't feel the cold. I didn't feel anything yet. But the rage, it was there, sealed tight, pulsing like a core reactor waiting to light up. They wanted me gone in silence. They forgot who built the system. The elevator to my apartment chimed open. I stepped inside, locked the door, and turned on the lights. My home office was still intact. Dual monitors, encrypted drive bays, my own personal dark net terminal. I inserted the old USB into a clean machine. The screen flashed once, then loaded a shell interface I hadn't used in years. Toolkit47.exe prompt. Blinked. Accessing archive log tree privilege. Xadmin. It was still alive, and somewhere inside the code, Alex had hidden something. Something he didn't want to be found, unless I was pushed out. They took everything. But they forgot the most important rule in systems architecture. The code never forgets. The elevator closed behind me. The screen on my phone lit up once more. Trigger armed, auto-audit in 96 hours. They never asked how the system worked. They just assumed it would obey them forever. I spent the first 2 days in isolation. No contact, no networks. Just me, lines of code, and the lingering hum of betrayal. While the city kept moving, I was already rewriting the future from a laptop older than my last job title. Toolkit 47 wasn't just a failsafe. It was a ghost framework. Something Alex and I built back in the early days, before compliance teams and procurement lobbies stripped the company of its soul. It was designed to detect logic, tampering and budget routing AI, redundant at the time. Now, it was my last remaining weapon. I followed the echo Alex left, a hashed trail embedded in the log archive, /grid/allocate/neuro/47x mesh. When I decrypted the branch, a secondary interface bloomed open. Inside were 24 flagged entries, all routed from Tanner Lee's terminal, all time-stamped before Julian officially took over. They were funneling ghost contracts, phantom projects approved on paper but never executed in code. Classic laundering through the AI procurement engine, a trick Alex and I had flagged months ago. Only back then, the anomalies disappeared before we could act. Now I knew why. At 4:17 a.m., I sent a dead packet through a secure tunnel to a proxy node in Detroit. A backup copy of the flagged entries would sit there. If anything happened to me, that node would ping Stratagem's compliance database with a direct audit request, one they couldn't intercept. Next step, bait the board. They wouldn't listen to an ex-employee, but they'd listen to their own system. I spent the next 12 hours crafting the trigger, a dormant scan task buried inside NeuroGrid's oversight scheduler. It would wait, invisible, until a contract ID 47 flag appeared during a routine budget sync. When that happened, it would call attention to the whole logic mesh, the same one they tampered with. I loaded it, encrypted it, and injected it using my old sandbox account. They hadn't revoked it properly. Amateurs. By nightfall, the system was armed. Now came the hard part, making them nervous enough to activate it. So I created noise, a public post on an old forum frequented by Stratagem's ex-devs, 47-X mesh, error cascade pattern. Anyone else notice budget loopback anomalies in the fourth quarter entries? The message was signed with a ghost handle, Moreno.0. It wouldn't take long before someone in the lower ranks flagged it. Maybe it would make its way to Clint Haraway, or maybe Julian himself would see it. The first time they buried this, they had surprise on their side. This time, I was watching. A soft chime echoed through my apartment. Motion detector. I reached for the monitor. Someone had just stepped into the hallway outside my door. Tall, broad shoulders, military posture. Not Tanner, not Julian, but someone who had access to Stratagem's inner circle. My phone buzzed again. New device logged in, admin Clint, 10.24118.07. He's looking where I want it. Time to push the next piece into place. Sometimes, all you need is one man with doubts in the right room. Clint Haraway wasn't a fool. He was old school, ex-infantry, transitioned to enterprise compliance after 2 decades in military systems architecture. He didn't trust smooth talkers or empty spreadsheets. He trusted logs, code, and patterns, and I had just disrupted his. The trigger packet I planted finally hit. Contract ID 47 got pulled into the quarterly reconciliation cycle, and the audit scan fired silently in the background. 43 seconds later, the system flagged a recursive loop in the approval logic, tagged Anomaly, Budget Mesh 47X. Clint's device ID logged in less than a minute after. The system routed him directly into the archive, exactly where I wanted him. At 10:42 a.m., he called an emergency quorum of the board's risk committee. Julian wasn't invited. Tanner was. The room was small, sealed, full of sharp eyes. Clint projected the budget log, 5 separate transactions routing approval through deprecated access keys, each tied to Tanner's credentials. The numbers didn't make sense. The explanations were worse. Sandbox testing, Tanner muttered. Clint folded his arms. Sandbox doesn't touch fiscal logic layers, not unless someone changes the root schema. I knew Clint would see it, but I needed more than suspicion. I needed him to ask. Who else knew? I dropped the second breadcrumb. At exactly 11:11 a.m., an anonymous email landed in the board's shared inbox. No body text, just a subject line. He built the architecture you're using to lie. Attached was a single image. Alex Moreno, smiling, holding the NeuroGrid 1 schematics, time-stamped 3 years ago, right before his disappearance. It was more than enough. Clint leaned back in his chair. We need an internal review, top down. I want all activity on NeuroGrid, dev logs, approval chains, DevOps pushes, under cold audit. Julian got the alert 30 minutes later. I watched it hit his screen through a back door still nested inside the dev telemetry app I'd quietly written 5 quarters ago. His jaw twitched. He paced. He called Tanner. No one picked up. By nightfall, they were rattled. But I wasn't finished. I needed them to panic. I needed them to act without checking first. So I did something reckless. I used a proxy login seeded with a now-defunct Stratagem account, one that once belonged to a contractor in procurement, and sent an internal memo directly to Julian's inbox. NeuroGrid 47X loop will fail under audit. Disable before full scan triggers. I signed it. VANTAGE, not a person, not a group, just a name with weight inside the darker channels of corporate black hat security. Julian took the bait. He summoned Tanner to the rooftop parking garage. No cameras, no mics. I had, of course, installed a low-frequency shotgun mic in one of the LED panel housings months ago, before my exit was even a whisper. Tanner sounded scared. Julian sounded furious. You said it wouldn't be traceable, Julian hissed. Tanner's voice cracked. We rerouted through internal temp nodes, no external logging. Julian. Then why the hell is Haraway digging? Why is Moreno's name in the thread? Tanner. I don't know. Maybe Dylan. Silence. Then Julian. No. He's gone. Stay focused. Wipe the sandbox logs. All of them. I want a clean system image by Friday. I downloaded the audio. Compressed. Duplicated. Archived. Because this wasn't just about catching them. It was about letting them bury themselves deeper. A camera hidden in the far LED panel blinked once, recording every word they thought no one heard. I didn't need to crash their system. I just needed them to distrust it enough to destroy it themselves. By Thursday morning, Stratagem was already bleeding from the inside. Clint Haraway's cold audit had unearthed more than just ghost contracts. It had exposed logic inconsistencies embedded across multiple modules. The NeuroGrid's loop wasn't just an error. It was deliberate sabotage. But no one on the board could admit that without implicating themselves in negligence. Julian called for a closed-door meeting that same day. I watched it unfold through a shadow feed patched into the boardroom's projector mirror, something I'd designed as a visual latency reducer, but which now doubled as my window back into the company that exiled me. He paced. Tanner stood beside him like a loyal mutt who knew he'd just pissed the carpet. Every contract flagged in this audit is under NDA-level encryption, Julian barked. It's illegal to even view them outside counsel. Clint remained calm. Then we'll bring in external counsel. You don't understand. This will trigger a federal review. Then you better pray the files are clean. Julian's jaw tightened. He realized, finally, that Clint wasn't bluffing. And that meant panic. At 12:46 p.m., Stratagem's internal system froze. I triggered a false positive in their behavioral AI monitoring engine, a fingerprint match to Vantage, the same alias I had used in the memo to Julian. It flagged an unauthorized deep scan request originating from within Julian's own IP range. For 3 seconds, the entire NeuroGrid monitoring dashboard collapsed into failsafe. In those 3 seconds, the kill switch I planted deep in the backup shell activated, a cascading extraction of all log data tagged under Julian's security credential layer, bundled into a time-locked packet titled 42riskprotocol.json. I sent the packet to one place, Clint Haraway's private inbox, And that was the real trigger. Clint reconvened the board. "You've got 24 hours, he told Julian in front of every voting member. "Either you explain these approval patterns, or I motion for a formal suspension." Julian's face didn't move, but Tanner flinched. That was the crack I needed. At 7:03 p.m., I uploaded a compressed audio file, garbled slightly, but still clear, onto Stratagem's internal dev forum. The rooftop conversation. The one where Julian told Tanner to wipe logs and clean the system. It spread fast. Junior developers, compliance officers, even the interns heard it by morning. By Friday, Julian was holding on to power by his fingernails. And then the unexpected happened. Maya Shaw, my sister, posted on her university's anonymous bulletin board. A story. Short, sharp, devastating. My brother got fired for doing his job, for building a system that told the truth. Then they tried to bury him. Funny thing about systems, though, when they're built right, they don't stay quiet. The post hit the front page of Reddit in 6 hours. By the next morning, 3 journalists had contacted her. I warned her to stay out of it. But she wasn't a child anymore. She posted again, this time with screenshots, budget allocations, a breakdown of how Contract 47 never reached any real department. She didn't link back to me, but she didn't have to. The Streisand effect was already in motion. News outlets began circling Stratagem like vultures. External legal counsel walked into the building at 10:15 a.m. The board moved Clint into interim leadership by lunch. But Julian, he didn't step down. He doubled down. He called in a security contractor. He initiated an internal lockdown. He claimed foreign interference. And then he tried to purge the servers. What he didn't know was that Alex had built a mirror drive, something even I didn't know until I got the ping. Mirror sync, initiated by Moreno. Alex was alive, and he was still watching. They thought the code was gone. But the code remembers. And now, so does the world. You don't survive inside a machine like Stratagem unless you know when to vanish and when to return. Alex Moreno was alive, not just a ghost in the logs. He had initiated a mirror sync that confirmed what I suspected. The real neurogrid audit logs hadn't been destroyed. They'd been duplicated and quarantined years ago, buried in a location only someone like Alex could reach. I sent a ping across the dark net node he used. No reply. But then, at 3:02 a.m., a 17.3 megabyte file landed in my inbox, encrypted. No subject. File name, cleftroot.json. I decrypted it. Inside, approval chains, IP logs, digital fingerprints, all leading directly to Julian and Tanner. They'd forged board signatures, altered AI optimization outputs to inflate results. Worse, they'd rerouted grant funds tied to national defense contracts into private accounts masked under shell vendors. That wasn't just corruption, it was federal. The moment I finished verifying the data, I called Maya. "It's time." She didn't hesitate. The girl who once hid behind my arm at graduation now walked straight into Stratagem's PR chaos and uploaded the audit packet to 3 independent security watchdogs and 1 major tech journalist. By noon, it was everywhere. CNN, Stratagem execs accused of multi-million-dollar fraud. TechTrack, internal AI flags ignored, whistleblower fired. Julian's face appeared on every feed. Tanner disappeared. Literally. At 2:14 p.m., Stratagem issued a formal statement. Executive restructuring. Ongoing investigation. Security protocol reviews. They were cornered. But I wasn't finished. I logged into Toolkit 47 one last time and opened the internal dev chat room I used to share with the engineering team. I typed a single line. Don't trust the silence. Check the logs. Always. Then I signed out. For good. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reminding the system who built it. I left the city that night, No press, no statements, no hero's return. But I wasn't running. I was preparing. Because when the truth finally explodes, you don't want to be in the blast radius. And in a sealed conference room across town, Clint Haraway finally opened the full contents of cleftroot.json. They say justice is slow, but when code is truth, justice comes at 3.7 gigahertz. I watched it unfold from a diner 3 states away, greasy coffee in hand, boots up on the opposite seat. No press, no noise, just the flicker of a TV in the corner, breaking news banner crawling across the screen. Stratagem Tech CEO Julian Roth indicted on federal fraud charges. They arrested him at his penthouse. Tanner was still missing. Rumors placed him in Panama, then Prague. It didn't matter. The system would find him eventually. He left too many footprints. Clint Haraway held the press conference personally. Calm, precise. We failed to act when our system tried to speak. That failure ends today. He never mentioned me, never said my name. He didn't have to. Anyone who read the internal emails, the audit logs, the anonymous posts, they knew. Alex resurfaced 2 days later. Brief message, signed with our old handle, V47. No words, just a data bundle. Thousands of internal chat logs showing how deep the rot had gone. Not just Julian and Tanner. 6 mid-level managers, 2 former board members, even a consultant embedded in military testing. Stratagem collapsed quietly. No fireworks, just exits, locked accounts, and a sudden vacuum in every corridor I used to walk. I didn't go back. They offered, of course. Clint extended an invitation. Advisory board, oversight role, full control of Neurogrid's ethics branch. I declined. Instead, I built something else. A ghost company. Lean. No titles. No suits. Just engineers and architects who understood the value of control and the price of betrayal. We called it Sentinel Core. Maya joined after graduating early. She designed the transparency protocols. Alex handled infrastructure. Me? I watched. Because systems always forget the men who built them, until those men remind the world they're still here. And I wasn't done reminding them. I closed the laptop. Outside the window, across the street, Stratagem's logo was being dismantled, letter by letter. The truth didn't shout. It waited, patient and sharp, until the silence cracked wide open. What began as a quiet dismissal spiraled into a reckoning no firewall could contain. In a world built on lines of code and boardroom deals, justice found its own syntax, precise, unforgiving, and impossible to override. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but once it echoes, it never fades. Because no matter how deep betrayal runs, the truth will always rise, line by line, until someone decides to read it